Hey, good evening, everybody, and welcome to another installment of Magic, Medicine, and Mysticism. There are plenty of opportunities out there for us to find documentary video and articles and books about the use of plants in our magic and the use of plants medicinally, but not a whole lot that talk about cultivating relationships with the spirits of those plants. And that is going to be the topic of tonight's installment. So we encourage you to get your questions ready, participate by commenting. We'll put your comments or questions up on the screen, and you'll be able to ask questions of our panel. We have an amazing panel with us tonight. Adam Darkley is not able to be with us, but we also have another special co-host and guest with us tonight. So stay tuned and we'll see you on the other side. And welcome back. So with me tonight for our panel, let me go ahead and put everybody's names up on the screen. We've got, I don't know if everybody's panel shows up the same as mine, but we've got Jim Sayers on the top here next to me, Andrea Savar and Gwendolyn H. Barry. And I will, for those who are watching for the first time, this is a live and interactive broadcast. So in addition to welcoming my co-hosts tonight, I want to welcome all of you who are watching and encourage you to comment. And as you make your comments, we would like to ask you to keep your comments brief so that they actually fit on the screen without covering up 3/4 of the folks that are on the bottom half of the screen. And just to quickly answer a question before we start introducing everybody, as far as any plugs for Adam Darkley's work, if you'll check out the comment section after the show, I'll be happy to put that on the screen. Adam, of course, is one of our faculty members at the Inner Alchemy Mystery School. We'll put links for that too at the end of the broadcast video tonight. He's brilliant. Not feeling well tonight, and so something came up for him where he felt it would be best to just take it easy and rest. Adam, we know you're watching, so feel better, brother. And so let's go ahead and start off with the ladies first, and then I'll have Jim introduce himself. And for those who don't know me, I'll do that last. Andrea, go ahead and tell us a little bit about your background, and we'll start with that, with our background and what led us to our experiences and work with plants.
For me, it's been just a lifelong tradition that started with my grandparents working with both sides of my family. One side is Italian, the other side is Persian, and really learning how to not only cultivate, but work with the plants in a much deeper way, where it was basically another teacher in my life for the plants themselves.
And we're going to be talking more about that. You guys will find that both Jim and Andrea are also faculty members with the Inner Alchemy Mystery School, and not saying that Gwendolyn is definitely going to be there, but she will definitely be there when her busy plate is a little less full. So Gwendolyn, tell us a little bit about your experience, because we've had you on the show before, and everybody goes nuts whenever you're on.
Oh, thank you. My name is Gwendolyn Barry, and I am the shamanic toolmaker, or the blender, here at Daughters of Isis. We're celebrating 30 years. We were established in 1991, and we started out as a little shop, and I gradually went into wholesale and retail online. It's been a journey that I began putting my hands in our herb room jars, and the plants started talking to me. It was a very strange experience. I was working very hard to reawaken some of my subtle qualities that I had as a child and sort of shut down. And through the plants, that happened. My grandmother was awfully good with them too. So I imagine that there's a little genetic tagging there. And I work with essential oils. I create flower essences. I listen to my guidance. I educate myself. I mean, you know, I have lots of wonderful books that magical, mystical, and educational, encyclopedic, but I always listen to my guidance, which is sometimes not the same thing. So that's a difference in how I might be working, other than your ordinary herbalist or whatnot. Of course, I also use herbs as they're meant medicinally.
Awesome. We're going to be diving into some of those topics. I'm really excited to hear more from you on that. And Jim Sayers, some of you have seen Jim on a couple of our most recent broadcasts. Jim, tell us a little bit about your background, brother.
Hi, everyone. So again, my name is Jim, and I was blessed to grow up around my Scottish and Irish, as well as Cherokee, Appalachian mamaw and grannies in their garden as well as at their kitchen table. And that's where my journey began. I then went on for traditional herbalist training. I am a master herbalist. However, I like to drop the master from the front of it because every plant, I don't think somebody could be a master of even one plant, let alone all of them. I work with Herbalists Without Borders as well and teach a monthly single herb intensive called Herbal Ally. And we really dive into each plant individually and how to develop a relationship with that plant, a working friendship and kinship with that plant. And I'm excited to talk a lot about that tonight.
Awesome. And for those who don't know me and haven't seen me around here, I am a lifelong practitioner of the Italian esoteric tradition. We did not originally refer to what we do as witchcraft, although it certainly fits the descriptions, every ancient description I've seen of the craft. But the largest part of it, the center of everything we did, was communicating with the energies and spirits of place and the energies and spirits of the ancestors, and that those ancestors include the energies and spirits of the plants. And so while many of us probably watching would have had the experience of having our parents or grandmas or aunts and uncles tell us when we were in their hair, go out and play in the garden or in the yard. For us, it was something that you even got told when you weren't in their hair, because they knew that the ancestors, the elders knew that if you went out there and played in the garden, you were going to have experiences that that would form the rest of your lives. So let's dive in, guys. Like I said, there's so much information out there about this is how you work with this plant and this is how you work with that plant, and these are the properties of this plant and the properties of that plant. But Gwendolyn brought up a really good point that I know that all four of us agree on, and that's understanding that that what really forms our practice, the information, the encyclopedic information, informs our sort of our foundational approach, and we then know how to approach the plant. But our work with the plant, the magic, actually happens the minute that you experience the plant, that you put your hands in the jar, as Gwendolyn said. Gwendolyn, do you like to be called Gwendolyn or Gwen?
Gwen is good.
Gwen, okay. I should have asked that sooner. I'm sorry. So as Gwen said, she put her hands in the jar and then experienced her teacher. Just guys, I'm not going to call on anybody the rest of the time where this isn't school. So just dive in and what was your experience like that with actually getting your hands in the plants? I know that both Andrea and Jim, you both come from families too that worked predominantly with the natural world.
When I began, I had it was my sister who built the herb room, and I had no one. That wasn't really my thing. But customers would come in, and so I would go, and my sister had wonderful books right there on the trunk that we used as a table in the herb room, like Jethro Kloss and Culpepper, and then always a copy of Scott Cunningham's Magickal Herbs was always around, and a few other medicinal, she's an acupuncturist, so there was some Chinese there. But I began to put my hands in the jars instead of the little shovel, I just felt good. So I would put my hands into the jars. And one day I put my hand, I'll never forget, I put my hand into a jar of rue herb. And all of a sudden I heard, whoa, like, stop. And I didn't know why. To make a very long story short, someone was purchasing rue not for magical purposes, but for medicinal purposes. And the medicinal purpose they had in mind was not good for what they were. It would be harmful. And it was the herb that stopped me. And onward, putting my hands in the jars, I began to talk to people who were buying about what they could do with these herbs, because I was getting a flow. And it wasn't like me. I would run back to the office and check things out after they left. And I finally became used to it. So mine is a little unorthodox,
Right on.
Not the merry way.
I actually think that's probably the most natural way to learn from them. And, for me, it was very similar as a child, but also seeing how, like, for example, with rue, when my, Persian grandma, there was an issue where someone was having, what could be considered the evil eye, or, there was always a little jar of rue seeds, the wild rue, which is the espont. It's actually a different plant, but we call it just rue, wild rue. And so I would watch her, burn it and do all of the ritual work to clear. And it is like you have this sort of whispering that kind of, if you're quiet and you just start to listen, you experience more than just what their properties are. You experience what their connection is with us and what their connection is in the spirit world, and how it's all very liminal. And rue especially, I love that you mentioned that one first, because it does have that, I think there's a reason it's so important to so many traditions.
Absolutely.
My actual go-to, I call her, to me, Madam Mugwort. She is my door opener and always has been. And I don't know why, but I can't. I'm traveling tomorrow. I will have mugwort in my back pocket. Protection. But it's just, when you work with plants the way that the four of us do, you develop your own unique relationships. That's going to be true for people who really care, who are really interested. They are eventually, but they do come to the teachers or the books to discover, and to be guided. And a lot of that is going on now. There's a lot of guidance. People are looking for answers to questions that have arisen, well, because of what the world is in right now, of course. But it's wild right now. And it's a wonderful place to be when you're like Jim, a teacher and a master herbalist who can give people foundational work and also relate to them a more spiritual way of accessing the information from the plant. It's rich. It's just rich.
Gwen, thank you. And I love that you mentioned mugwort. That's actually the leaf around my neck is mugwort. And a portal for me to the other plant allies, as well as to my own ancestors as well. So me and mugwort are good friends. So good to hear that you're close too.
Well, and we've got quite a few comments here. Frankie, I would love to put your one comment up, but then we wouldn't be able to see Andrea or Gwen. So I encourage everybody who's watching to go and look. There is a beautiful story that Frankie just shared, as well as so many other comments that are coming in. I can see that this is a topic that folks are getting excited about. And so I want to kind of transition into one of those first conversations that we have, and a conversation that's been emerging kind of intersectionally at a time when folks are beginning to confront the toxicity of the patriarchy, the manipulation of the matriarchy, and understanding the horrific role that colonialization has played, both in the magical world and the medicinal world, the natural medicine world. And so tonight, one of the things that I wanted to start the conversation off is, for those who know me and know that I identify as genderqueer, I want you to forget all of that for a second and imagine that suffer through looking at me for a minute. And when you're looking at me, what appears on the screen, probably for most of you, is that I present as male. But if I bring my hands into the picture, a couple of your eyebrows may go up, and you may say, okay, well, maybe not 100% male. And then we have to start to struggle with, well, then what does that mean? Does that mean that he's trans? Does that mean that he's just gender queer, gender fluid? Is he a drag queen, or is he truly transgender? And the answer to all of those questions is yes. But what if just as we had to learn over these last 30 years or so how to come to terms with gender, what if the colonialization of magic and natural medicine boxed in everything that we know about the plant world as well, the natural world, the magical world, the noumenal world? And so what if maybe experiencing like there are two forms of roux, and traditionally, as Andrea did a beautiful class on this recently, you have roux de graviolens, which is the Italian roux, and then you have meadow roux or wild roux, which is esfand in the Persian world. And roux de graviolens is seen as the grandmother, and Ruda, what is the meadow roux called? Ruda.
We just call it wild roux.
Yeah, the esfand is grandfather roux. And so, but what if, now I've experienced and worked with roux from the time I was 6. And there are times that plant is definitely exuding a masculine energy. I think Gwen just gave us a really good example of that. No, stop. You're about to do something that you shouldn't do. So what if everything that we've learned about this plant's feminine energy, this one's masculine energy, and I've heard magical practitioners say, I can't use that one because I need to call forth Mercury energy, which is another example of our buying into binary gender properties, because Mercury can be just as much of a big old missy as anyone else. But we don't know that unless we cultivate relationships. What are you guys' takes on that?
Well, I think it kind of goes back to, I do think that colonization had a big part of that, for sure, as we've seen in certain indigenous cultures where, like, I know Jim and I were talking about this kind of via a post a while back about different pronouns that are used just other than the pronoun it. Like, just first off, if a plant is seen as an it, which is an object, then it's not seen as any type of spiritual being. That's the first problem. And then the second problem is separating it into two defined boxes of gender. And then when really, I think it's more like, if we go back to Hermetics and see how we have gender is one, we have masculine and feminine balancing in every singular person or spirit. So there's both. And in that case, you can call upon the one, the feminine, if you need it, that part of the plant, or the masculine, or whatever presents in that particular moment. And it doesn't have to be, there doesn't have to be a rigidity there, in my opinion.
You know, when I am getting ready, that's beautiful, Andrea. I got to say, when I am getting ready to harvest for a flower essence, I spend time watching that flower if I have the time. And generally I will make it, but I will spend time watching how that flower or that plant performs in nature. How does it speak? How does it act with the elements? In the wind, in the rain, in the morning sun. And that talks to me with color and petal formation and stamen. And what happens with me is what I can find, you know, Culpepper describing, or Scott Cunningham describing as masculine, extraordinarily feminine in response to the nature and the plant life around them. And then I do the light work and tap in and listen to the plant, the flower speaks, the flower sings, the plant talks. I mean, that's my experience. So I think it's true that it's also us. We are an element in the work with the plant ally. So we are also going to be tapping in to that devic kingdom, that species, and the essential voice coming from that plant ally through a filter of us also. I think that has to be true. It's, you know, if you're not just grinding herbs and making, you know, the medicines that do so well. If you're working on these multi-dimensional levels, which are becoming more and more a part of our conscious walk every day, then you have to see that we are part of the whole.
Yeah, I think you know, it's worth saying and acknowledging, and I think we all are on the same page on this, that, you know, Culpepper and Cunningham did brilliant work. And they did brilliant work with their awareness at that time. And it's easy to reach a point where we say, oh, okay, so we're going to just toss all that out because we know better now. There's still some brilliant groundwork that's laid there. And whenever there's brilliant groundwork, when somebody watches our video, you know, 50 years from now, they're going to find all the mistakes we made too. And so hopefully we don't throw it out, but we also don't turn a blind eye to the colonialism and the influence of the patriarchy and the influence of white privilege and all of that in there as well.
And
Jim,
I just want to say, there have been some extraordinarily bad botanists through the year that that have really like messed things up by ignoring a lot of the indigenous culture, what they were saying about plants. Yeah. And like, so anyway, that's a whole other subject.
and bad herbalists too, which brings us to the perspective I was going to ask Jim for, because we've experienced some of that in working in the natural medicine world, and then for us having that connection to the more magical world. One of the things that struck me really, really powerfully this past week was seeing when we look at, without getting into that whole drama, when we look at the people who were taking a stand and saying no more of this manipulation and cultural appropriation and no more of this injustice, they're all people who are not just herbalists, who are not just medicinal practitioners, but they all have that powerful magical principle at work in their lives. Not just oh yeah, and I also do magic, or yes, I'm also a witch. It's evident. You look at them, you feel it. It just exudes from them. That live broadcast that I know we both watched earlier, I couldn't help but just like sit there with kind of grateful tears running down my eyes as that young woman, you know, spoke her piece. What can you add to that conversation, Jim?
You know, I really found it interesting, the parallels between the magical community as well as the herbalist community, how so many of those who identify as male and benefit from white privilege owe their wisdom and their foundation to women, and sometimes indigenous women or women of color, and yet are the ones that get the spotlight in this. The white male is who gets the spotlight on the stage or gets the book offer. And it's interesting to see how there's a parallel between the magical community as well as the herbal community. And something I have always done, of course, is give credit to my mamaws and my grannies. That's where it came from. I was blessed to be allowed to sit at that table because that was a table of wise women, and that knowledge that was given to me came from them. And to see the herbal community standing up and saying, "Hey, we need to give time to these indigenous women and women of color," and then to see the white men reacting and saying, it's the woke mob coming after them. It's just, it just boggles my brain that, you've recognized that you've gained your knowledge from these women, but you don't want to give them time on the stage.
Yeah. Or even give them proper credit in your books and your workshops and anything else that you're doing.
Exactly.
I would like to say that most of my teachers have walked through my door, or I've just found them. I guess a lot of us have gone through that. And, I'm basically your Irish kid with the Catholic guilt. And
what's that?
Your Jesuit cousins, It's like, I'll say once, you're Scotch, honey. But the thing is that all of my teachers have been indigenous, Native American. And when Jim speaks, I'm reminded of the women of the Longhouse of the Iroquois Federation and how they, in equality with the warriors and the hunters, were chief. And that's happening again on reservations, has been for as long as, for years. But this colonization, this patriarchy, it's overall patriarchy. What I think is, and what you guys are describing, and I miss that, I think we have to remember, and Gianmichael will know why I'm saying so. Our biggest partner right now is the mother of nature, is our home, is Gaia, or planet Earth, or Mother Earth, however you see Turtle Island. And I think that there's a wake up there that is infusing, not just plant allies, the elements are speaking to us. And there is definitely a social paradigm shift occurring because of, Lady COVID. So things are changing, and it's conversations like this and herbalists like Jim and you and all of us working how we are, and cataloging, documenting, and sharing. That's the other big thing. We're all sharing. This is no longer the profit-driven, it's about people reaching out and sharing with one another because people are getting more and more curious.
Yeah, I'll say before we ask Andrea to weigh in, that one of the things that that just put me over the top with you and made me know that there was this soul connection with you, Gwen, was I needed some particular oils for working and ran out of plant materia and went foraging, and there was no more of a couple of the plants that I needed. And I knew that I could wait for some trusted vendors from Amazon to get them to me. But I like to work with the people that I know and support their businesses whenever I can. And so I saw that you had some of those oils, And then I got my oils and in with this order from someone who at that point barely knew me. We had, niceties on social media. There was a COVID care packet in there. And I had just gotten out of the hospital with COVID. So I sat there and cried and said, how beautiful is this, that the Daughters of Isis have decided that when people, and at first I thought, oh, she was just being nice to me because I got out of the hospital. And then I went on the website and saw that everybody that was placing orders at that time was getting this care package.
Still.
And I think, still. And I think this is, I think that this is an example, just a beautiful illustration of what's happening in our world all around. I mean, Gwen, when the show is over, we'll fill you in on how something that you just said, without you're even having known, because you and Jim didn't know one another before. Yeah, I mean, the mention of Turtle Island was not a coincidence. This conversation is blowing me away. Andrea, I know that you, I could see just on your face and how you lit up as we're talking about, as Gwen was talking about too, some of these things, and the mother and Turtle Island and Isis and, and Gaia, and this connection to this moment, this inflection point that we're in right now.
Well, yeah. And I think a lot of people have been feeling that. And I think it's one of the reasons why I decided to teach the things that I've learned my whole life. Whereas before I just kept it to myself and my family, and we worked together and that was all. But more and more people are feeling this. And I don't know if it's because, I think part of it is because of the year of being primarily at home. And so you have more time to think, more time to settle. You're not as busy. There's a connection, but there's something else. I mean, there's something much bigger happening. And it's most people I know, even people who are not magically inclined or not, they feel it. They feel something, this awakening and this connection. And it's, I think there's something that's waking up in our subconscious too, that is these original teachers that we had when we were children, that we listened to in this very subtle way. Maybe without even really realizing that, you're talking to Buttercup, Buttercup's talking to you. There's, nasturtium, the children plants, dandelions, like all of these things are in your subconscious and they've been with you in your DNA and they are part of your ancestry. And what's happening now is they're tapping on your shoulder, they're whispering in your ear that it's time to wake up again. Like we need to wake up again.
Yeah, I'm going to say as we first, I'm going to apologize a little bit because for folks who are used to watching this show, they know that we usually will go as long as forever. And I've recently been taking some courses that help to improve the quality of the content we provide for you guys. And so we're already 3 minutes over where they told me I should be, but we'll keep it kind of concise. Before I go around and this will give my co-hosts a chance to think. I'm going to start with Jim and then Gwen and then wrap up with Andrea for some final thoughts on what the next step is. How do you personally take time to connect with the spirits of these plants and what those who are watching can do in the simplest of terms? There's some brilliant suggestions that have been made in some of our coursework that we do at the mystery school, and some stuff that I know that Gwen started talking about and that Andrea does. But I'll share just to what Andrea was saying. This past week, or the last 2 weeks actually, was dressing a bunch of candles for a particular working that went out to a bunch of people. And so I do that work on my patio in the early hours of the morning, when I could sit and have tea and just kind of be present, because with Parkinson's and seizure disorder, I got to give the meds a chance to work it to kick in. And so sitting still comes really easy to people with Parkinson's when their meds are off, because you're stiff. And so I was sitting there very, very still, very quiet, kind of rigidly, with all these candles out on the table. And I had just put the plant materia in the candles and melted them in with some oils. And this squirrel, who's one of the two squirrels that lives in the tree outside our patio, with whom we're friendly, came to the table, like blew my mind. I went back to being a kid again, because the squirrel came to the table and nothing out. Normally they'll come begging for food. This time the squirrel brought a flower and placed the flower in front of all the candles, and just did it, looked at me, wondered why I wasn't moving, probably, and then left. Like, it was the most beautiful thing in the world. And of course I sat with that for a while, and then I cut some of the leaves of the flower up and put them in each one of the candles, and then resealed everything. But it just said to me, yeah, man, this is a turning point. The squirrels, now we know that the reason the squirrel came up was because they're used to getting bread and stuff and seeds, fed to them every day from our home. But they're not used to making offerings to, magical offerings to what's going on the altar. And so it lets me know that this inflection point is way bigger, I think, than anything that we've seen before. So, Jim, let's start with you. What can the people for whom this message is resonating do in order to tap into cultivating a real relationship with the spirits of those plants?
Gwen spoke to it a little bit, as did Andrea, but being observant and just quieting the mind. We're all attached to our technology for good or bane, but separating yourself from that and observing nature, because Gaia, Mother, is offering things to us. Something that Andrea and I talked about was purple dead nettle, and how it's absolutely everywhere this year. So to me, the earth is saying we need purple dead nettle in our lives right now. So really slowing down, and that's an herb that, yes, I've worked with, but I haven't spent time with. So now I'm spending time with that. I'm making green smoothies. I'm making medicine. I'm just enjoying the beauty of the plant and getting to know that plant. So really getting out into your own yard, into your own environment, observing what nature wants you to pay attention to. And then using the senses, the sight, the hearing. Most important is taste, and ingesting the herb, because we are what we eat. So I'm all about making healthy new cells out of purple dead nettle at the moment. So, but that's really what I have is observe and listen, because the greatest teacher is the earth.
Right on. And for those that are watching, Jim has a course in the mystery school that talks about, among some of the other techniques of listening, doing some journey work to help you get there. Gwen, what about you? I mean, you talked about putting your hands right in that vessel and fully experiencing and listening. What would you say to the person who's brand new to this, who maybe they're a little bit scared to just put their hands in, to dive in, as a pioneer like you would do? What about the one who just wants to dip their toe in?
Jim makes a great deal of sense. And I think all of us agree that going out and playing in the garden, as you put it, Gianmichael, was, yes. But there's also this other part, your intention and your prayer. Because intention and prayer, or spell casting, when you communicate from within, from the heart right now, Gaia's listening and feeling. And it's practice. And some people just naturally have that going on because of their love of nature, or birds, or flowers, and gardening. But anybody can go out and sit down every morning. And as Jim said, be quiet and observe, but also remember to say the little, intention or prayer. Gaia, I know you're here. I'm sending you healing from my heart. Send me yours from yours. Simple.
Right on. That was beautiful. Thank you, Andrea. I have to tell you, Gwen, that to me, became really evident and like not being rigid in our intention. We moved into a new home. My intention and desire was to create this garden that, produced every kind of vegetable in the universe, regardless of what zone I'm in. I was going to have, I was just going to take over. And then I got in there working with the earth and started to realize just how toxic, just how poisoned it had been. And so sometimes when you do that, when you do what you just said and say, Gaia, I am here for you. How can I serve you? She says, wildflowers. Let's detoxify this land so that the next person that comes after you, or maybe next year, you can grow all of those foods that you want. But right now, we got to get this poison out of here. And so strategy had to change. But you're so right. It's really about our intention. And if our intention is to be of service, that means we got to shut up and let the earth speak to us. Let the spirit of the mother come through. Andrea.
Yeah, I think that reciprocity is really one of the things that is so important that we remember and start to really incorporate into our work. And I just wanted to say, because I agree with everything everyone has said, so I just want to add one of the things that I do in my first module is more because I do believe that we need to observe everything that's around us, because there's so many messages, like Jim said, with the purple dead nettle. And I know last year at this time, mullein was like off the hook. And, with all the lung issue, that just made perfect sense that mullein was going crazy.
And after the wildfires.
And then we had fireweed, and we had all the wildfires, because I'm here and where we have wildfires. And so, all of that. But one of the things too is that for people who don't have a yard, who can't go out, who maybe have a disability where they are sick and they need to be indoors for whatever reason, just like everything in the liminal is fluid, so is time. And if you can sit down and remember and think about the first plant when you were a child that was important to you, that made you smile, that brought you joy, that made you feel that little spark, that something was special about the earth and magic. Let yourself, transport back to that moment in time, that point, and just think about what they may have been telling you in that time. And just the first things that pop into your mind, you don't even have to, you can be laying in your bed, you can be sitting in a chair, you can be anywhere where you're comfortable, and let yourself kind of, and I just saw Frankie just write Itchy Ball Tree, because we had this whole conversation about Itchy Ball Tree, but it's exactly that. They have a message. And, Itchy Ball Tree, which I never know the real word for, was used for, I think, a type of aspirin later, so pain, like there's a lot of connections there. But anything like that, you don't have to, if you can't physically do it, you don't have to. It's there in the spirit realm too.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a tie into that, doing that journey work, and then remember to just ask somebody, if you're confined to home, violets grow indoors year round. And it's one of the most beautiful. And I would just say, just to kind of wrap everything up, because we're going to be at 45 minutes, and that's close enough to 30 for me. That if there's a particular plant that you would like to cultivate a relationship with, but you can't grow it where you're at, or it's not growing where you're at, ask the plants that are where you are. Gaia is their mother and will bring those plants to you. Those of you who've been watching us for a while know last year that in the midst of all of the chaos that was the pandemic and my losing my business and losing our life savings, as I lost the business, I needed to do some really serious defensive work, and Datura started growing out of the sidewalk.
Wow.
Around our front door. I took pictures and showed everybody, like, look, this is insane, guys. It's growing in the cracks of the sidewalk in the city. And so, I just encourage you, just reach out to the Mother Earth herself, to the plants that you have access to, and ask them to carry a message on the winds to the plants that you want to connect with. And those relationships, like any relationship, take time to cultivate. Don't always go the way that we like, might surprise us. And as long as you don't lock yourself in to these colonialist constructs, including gender, including this is strictly the medicinal purpose, or this isn't the medicinal purpose, allowing yourself to kind of be in that moment, you unlock that potential that's waiting for you. So I want to thank you, Jim and Gwen and Andrea, for being here, and all of you that are watching. I want to thank you as well. If you're watching on the replay, I know that we normally simulcast these to YouTube. Starting with this week, they will go on YouTube about an hour after our show, because we've got some things that we're going to tweak in the background after the show. So in about an hour, you'll be able to find them on our YouTube channel. All of that information, as well as information on how you can take a free week-long sneak peek at the Mystery School itself and the collective, will be available at the end of this video too. So thank you guys for being here. Thank you so much. Thank you guys for watching. And we are at 45 minutes and 59 seconds. So I'm gonna call that a wrap and call that success. Thank you, everybody. Love you.
Thank you.
Thank you.